I think it's 34 years ago, the very first so-called test tube baby was born due to in vitro fertilization in England. Louise Brown. Alana reminded me that she's a mom herself now. So a full generation has passed with these new assisted reproductive technologies of sperm donation, egg donation, IVF, surrogacy, various other arrangements of this kind. And we're only now starting to discover the social fallout of these things. I was on the train recently from Princeton to Newark Airport and saw an ad on the wall of the train car I was on inviting young women, the age of the women in this room, to donate their eggs and make it possible for some couple to achieve the dream of having their own family. And it offered them $8,000 for an egg if they qualified otherwise, young women in a certain age range. And I wonder how many women see that sign and realize that they're actually helping another couple to have their child, because it's still their egg. So these are the sorts of issues that Alana's begun to address with the Anonymous Us project. You saw me holding up her book earlier today. I have a copy over here. You should definitely get a hold of it. There's a website by the same name. She herself has a very affecting story about her discovery about herself, and she will speak to us today on The Emperor's New Kids. Alana Newman, thanks very much.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. The Emperor's New Kids, derived from the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Emperor's New Clothes. Just to refresh your memory about the story, there's an emperor, and these two tailors come, and they say they have this magic fabric, and stupid, incompetent people who are not fit for their jobs, cannot see this fabric. And so the emperor, he was like, oh, well, this will be useful. And of course, he pretends that he can see the fabric, and they make him this outfit, this garment, and he proceeds to go out and to meet the townspeople. And his ministers pretend that they can see the fabric because nobody wants to be thought of as stupid or incompetent, or that would be bad. And even when he goes out in front of the townspeople in his underwear, completely naked, even the townspeople pretend that they can see the garment because everybody's got this fear that they're going to appear to be stupid. But there's this little boy in the crowd, and he doesn't get this adult stuff that's going on. And he yells out, "Hey, the emperor's naked." And slowly people are like, "Hey, yeah, he is naked." And the emperor cringes. And now what we're doing is we have these family formations that have kids, but how did they get those kids? And everybody's afraid to appear, mean or bigoted, but it's very important. Okay, I'm going to talk about third-party reproduction. The reason I've been so affected by this is my mom's first husband was infertile. So to solve their childlessness, they adopted a baby girl from Korea, my older sister. Later on, they wanted to have a second kid, and long story short, they used an anonymous sperm donor to have me. And when I was 8, my mom divorced her then husband, quickly remarried. She had a son naturally with her new husband. And so I had a really wonderful view as to the importance of biology, because I had my adopted sister, me, I was my mom's genetic child, and then my brother, who had the benefit of both his parents. So I'm going to talk about, why the fertility industry and the use of third-party reproduction has skyrocketed. What do these families look like? What are the issues for donor-conceived people? And how do you talk to your friends and your family and the public about it? I need to give you guys a couple definitions. A lot of people don't understand the differences between different kind of fertility industry products. IVF is mostly used with a couple's own sperm and own eggs to have their own genetic child. It means you conceive outside of the body and you implant a human embryo with a unique DNA sequence into a woman's womb. I'm not going to be talking about that. That's got its own issues that we can address another day, but I'm going to be talking about sperm donation, egg donation, and surrogacy, where there's an outside party where a child will be deliberately separated from at least one of their biological parents. It's very natural to want to have kids. It's an urge we feel inside of us. There are even species of arachnids, bees, and ants that die immediately after after mating. Some people say, having a child is your purpose in life. I think what that urge stems from is a quest to leave something behind. It's a quest for immortality. And there's genetic immortality and mimetic immortality. So genetic immortality is having kids, cloning, preservation, if you want to become a vampire. And then there's mimetic immortality, which is a meme, is something that can be passed from mind to mind. It's a song, it's a recipe, it's a religion, a value system. Kids are very attractive vessels because they're the only thing right now that we have that can offer you both. You can pass on both your genes and your memes. Okay, this is important. Sperm count in the last 50 years has dropped 50%. There's a huge infertility epidemic. You have buzzwords like green and organic. Endocrine disruptors is going to be the next buzzword. Synthetic estrogens is going to be the next buzzword. You guys know about social infertility. They were talking about delayed childbearing, homosexuality. Clinical infertility is something not a lot of people are talking about because it's shameful. People and animals that are being born intersex is skyrocketing. Your endocrine system is a balanced system of glands and hormones that regulate the vital functions of body growth, sexual development and behavior, production and utilization of insulin, your metabolism, your intelligence, your behavior, and your ability to reproduce. And we see a lot of cancers happening. We see a lot of things. And so you get it from pesticides. You get it from BPAs in canned food. You get it from the birth control pill. The birth control pill is a synthetic estrogen. And where it happens is these tiny chemicals, they disrupt the normal development in a woman's womb. So as the baby's growing, their hormone balance is off, and it affects their reproductive health later. Okay. Infertile people need love too. About 15% of the population is infertile. And so, but you don't really know that until you try to have kids often. So a lot of couples, they try to have kids, they can't. And especially, I hear a lot of stories where, the woman wants to have a kid, she's not infertile, but the husband doesn't want to lose his wife. She still wants that immortality, she still wants to have kids. So he agrees to use a sperm donor so that he can still have his wife, he can still have that love. Third-party reproduction does not cure infertility. The infertile person is not suddenly reproducing. It's the donor that's reproducing. And so the child thus has had at least one of their biological parents deliberately removed. So we had this, sperm count problem. So we've replaced the biological father, and we've put in a social father. And then if biology doesn't matter, then why does gender matter? And we had, lesbian couples coming and using sperm donors and going to sperm clinics. And if gender doesn't matter, then why does two matter? Why can't single moms who are especially ambitious have a kid? Why can't a polyamorous situation have kids? And we've made fathers disposable. This is a masturbatorium. That's where life begins these days. And Nadia Suleiman, who is famous as Octomom, she has 14 kids with a sperm donor, $1 million in debt. She just released a new adult film. She's a character. She's a character. And because this is a business now, anybody who has the money can have a kid. Anybody who has the money can have a kid, because donor conception really is a euphemism for buying and selling kids. It's a market for children. So what happens when fathers become disposable? Well, we have really good data on fatherlessness. And 90% of homeless and runaway youth come from fatherless homes, 90% of arsonists, 80% of rapists, 75% of adolescents in chemical abuse centers. And girls are 711% more likely to become teen moms. And, okay, yeah, I'll move on. So that's what happens when we dispose of fathers. But now there's this gender equality language, and we've disposed of fathers. So if things are going to be equal between the sexes, then we should be able to dispose of mothers too, right? So we've got gay male couples who are echoing the behaviors and actions of their lesbian sisters, and they're using egg donors and surrogates to have, procure their own children. And then you have single dads by choice who are using surrogates and egg donors to procure their own children. And I'm really not satisfied with how women's groups have responded to this, and I think it's because we have very powerful women like Nicole Kidman, Sarah Jessica Parker, Elizabeth Banks, who are themselves using surrogates and egg donors. So they're focusing on their career, making a ton of money, and then misusing poor women's bodies after the fact. So you have poor women being they're becoming baby machines. They're especially in India. India has just been boom. And you have famous, even straight guys, like this is Cristiano Ronaldo. He's a famous soccer player. He had a girlfriend, a supermodel girlfriend, and at the same time used a surrogate and an egg donor to have his own kid. These guys, they're Hong Kong billionaires. The guy on the right his name is Peter Lee. And Surrogacy is completely illegal in Hong Kong. It's even illegal to go to another country and use a surrogate. But he's a billionaire. So he hired a California surrogate, and of course an egg donor, to have triplet boys. Of course, boys are preferred. In order to have all boys, basically you create a bunch of embryos and you search for and destroy the female embryos. And the number 3 rhymes with luck in Mandarin. So he got like his designer babies. And these little boys, I'm sure they're going to grow up to be billionaires and inherit all that wealth. And the only thing that they know about their mother, their genetic mother and their birth mother, is that she accepted money in order to abandon them. So we use terms like donation, but it's they're lies. What the donors are doing is they're accepting money to promise to have nothing to do with the child. So, a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet, but abandonment by any other name feels just as painful for the child. With the market in babies, you can grow your own victim. This is Peter Trung and Mark Newton. They were a California couple who hired a Russian surrogate and paid her $8,000 to deliver their son. Days after his birth, they started sexually abusing him. They created and distributed child pornography. They traveled all around the world prostituting the boy to their pedophile network. And this is what Newton had to say. So they're going to prison for 40 years. This is what Newton had to say. He said, "Being a father was an honor and privilege that amounted to the best 6 years of my life." The boy was taught that his environment was normal. He was taught how to evade questions and how to answer people, like the right way. And what I want to get across with this is you need to reconsider the wanted child. Everybody thinks, oh, but they're so wanted. You hear Neil Patrick Harrison saying this on Saturday Night Live, the late night show. He says, but our children are so wanted, and that's supposed to make you feel safe. That's supposed to make you feel like, oh, so they're going to be wonderful, wonderful parents. This little boy was desperately wanted, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't necessarily going to be a good thing. So don't take the word wanted at face value, please. What happens when mothers become disposable? Childbearing is seen as a low-class service that you can outsource. Healthcare needs for the birth mother are considered burdens to the bottom line. There was a woman an American surrogate who was hit with $200,000 in medical costs from complications due to her birth, because childbirth is life-threatening for women still, even with technology. And the couple won't pay it, so she's stuck with $200,000 in medical bills. And obviously, the laundry list of benefits a mother provides go out the window, including safety. And then there's short-term health consequences for egg donors and surrogates. There are strong associations with cancers for the hormones they're taking. The FDA has not approved the use of Lupron, which is the main hormone. They've not approved it for fertility use. If you watch the documentary Eggsploitation, that's a wonderful resource to find out more about the health consequences for egg donors. And then the long term is femininity itself and motherhood itself is undermined. If women somewhere are seen as just baby machines, that really affects how people view women and femininity. Okay, and children are becoming commodities. This is a real ad for egg donation. By the way, the origin in all of this is eugenics. Sperm donation was grown from eugenicists. So if you're tall, if you have a good education, if you got, maybe blonde hair and all those kind of features, you get $100,000 or more for your eggs. And this is an ad for a sperm donor. It's a business, it is baby selling. But the loophole is if no specific child exists when the contracts are signed and when the money is exchanged, is it baby selling? Well, on their websites, they don't have pictures of sperm. They have pictures of babies. They're selling babies. The intended parents, they're not redecorating their office and turning it into a nursery to welcome home a vial of sperm. They're doing it to welcome home a baby, okay? This woman, her name is Teresa Erickson. She used to be a surrogacy attorney. She was a sweetheart of the industry. She had a really successful radio show and all sorts of celebrity clients. She was also a serial egg donor. She went to jail for baby selling because what Teresa did was she went and she found her own anonymous egg donors and she found her own anonymous sperm donors and she created this inventory of human embryos, and then she would find a surrogate, implant the embryos in a surrogate, and when the pregnancy was in the second trimester, which is considered, safe, then she would go and find a couple and sell, would you like to take care of this child? And she created 13 children this way. Each child she made at least $100,000 on. And some were up to $180,000. So you see, that's kind of an opportunity for corruption, don't you think? But the difference here was the only difference between human trafficking and the gift of life is when you sign the contract. The reason she's in jail was because she signed the contract after conception and implantation rather than before conception and implantation. Does that make sense? Okay. After she got sentenced, she's quoted as saying, "Adoption and surrogacy in California is a corrupt billion-dollar industry." And she says the alternative family building process is confusing to many people. It's confusing to many people. And it is. So what happens to the kids? What happens when children become commodities? We see identity loss, disenfranchised grief. These are all, a lot of these I have evidence for, and some of them are just hunches. Some of them I see anecdotally. It's through self-reflection and knowing other donor-conceived people and connecting dots. I would love for you guys, if there's any kind of research people in the audience, I would love to talk to you and give you a book so that we can develop some good questions for research data and surveys. Identity loss. So who's this guy? Malcolm X. Okay. He's one of our most celebrated civil rights leaders. And the X in his name symbolizes his unknown origins. He was born Malcolm Little, but he got rid of Little because he considered it his slave name, a false name. And then you guys are probably a little young, but there was a book and a TV miniseries called Roots. And That came out in 1976 and 1977 for the miniseries. Alex Haley wrote the biography for Malcolm X, and then he wrote a book called Roots that was done after 10 years of research to try to find out where he originally came from before his ancestors were American slaves. And it was really powerful. Obviously, Time magazine. It was the second most watched TV show in American history. Everybody came out. This idea of we need to know where we come from. We've got a lot of evidence that actually is important to people. That it's wrong to separate people from their ancestry, their family, their heritage. But yet we're doing it all again. We're doing it all again. After World War II, there was this big adoption boom. Before, a lot of eugenicists, a lot of people kind of had the mindset that nurture was very important. But after World War II and the Nazis, everything became about nurture, and nature was supposed to mean nothing. You can imagine why. But so there was this flood of adoption, and this was a letter to the Mental Health Journal, the problem of adoption. Knowledge of and definite relationship to his genealogy is necessary for a child to build up his complete body image and his world picture. It's an inalienable and entitled right of every person. There's an urge, a call in everybody to follow and fulfill the tradition of his family, race, nation, and religious community into which he was born. And losing this deprivation, could result in a stunting of emotional development. So yeah, identity loss. I made my point. My next point, disenfranchised grief. Let me just take water really quick. Okay, so if your mother or father were to die, and you told someone that, the usual reaction is that they say, oh wow, I'm so sorry. They give you a hug. They understand that that's probably painful. When your donor conceived, you are expected to be grateful to be alive. If you complain, the first thing people say is, oh, but you wouldn't be alive. Oh, boo-hoo-hoo. This was my mom's best friend. His name was Gary. That's his wife, Shirley. He died of cancer when his kids were 5 and 7. And it was really sad. The entire community came out to the funeral. Everybody was crying. My mom was crying. My mom said, oh, those poor kids, they can't, their dad is gone. Their dad is gone. And it is sad. It's really sad. Shouldn't have happened. It's total tragedy. The kids have a oil painting, huge portrait of their father above their dining room. On his gravestone, which they visit all the time, it has a beautiful quote about their father's love for them, for his children. They have photo albums. They went on these glorious vacations where they could build memories together. They have tools to grieve, right? They were given the space, the time, and the tools to grieve. Donor conceived people don't have any of that. We don't have pictures. We don't have stories. We have no token of love whatsoever. We don't have tools. We're just grieving in isolation. It's disenfranchised. It's difficult for us. Toxic shame. Shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed, and therefore unworthy of love, unworthy of belonging. Okay. It's, there's a lot of shame involved with donor conception. First, you have the shame of infertility, and then the process of, especially sperm donation, is rather humiliating and it's undignified. It involves masturbation, and you can make a million jokes about it. It's shameful. It is shameful. Two ways people typically deal with shame is they withdraw. They want to conceal themselves and hide the inadequate person that they think they are. Or they get angry and they throw the pain away and out from themselves, outward and away. Do you guys know who this woman is? Okay. This is Aileen Wuornos. She had a big Hollywood movie made about her. Charlize Theron starred in it. It's called Monster. Okay. She died from lethal injection in 2002. She murdered 7 men while working as a prostitute. So Aileen she had incestuous relationships with her brother. She was raped by her grandfather's friend at 13 and impregnated. Supported herself through prostitution. Her mother abandoned her. Her father abandoned her. Hurt people hurt, is what I'm trying to say. Someone made the comment last night, like, oh, can we just sit back and let society unravel while we have our perfect little, families and we, march on. Problem is, we live in community, and when you have a lot of people in pain and struggling with toxic shame, you might be the brunt of their anger. Your kids might be affected by this. The number one predictor of child abuse is a kid living with a non-genetic guardian, especially a male. Number one predictor. There's a really great study in Canada, but there's studies in so many countries. I mean, this is real. You can't shake this. But you can look it up. It's called the Cinderella Effect. It's free online. And they studied the homicide rates, kids who were murdered, killed, even through neglect, I guess, by a guardian. And 98 out of 100 of the cases, it was the stepdad or mom's boyfriend. And then when you think about, it takes a lot to kill a child, but when you think about just neglect, not investing in the kid, not loving them, or maybe just verbal abuse or sexual abuse, you can see how kids who don't live with both their biological parents and don't have the protection of their biological father are really vulnerable. Okay, this is a clip from a Lupe Fiasco music video. He's a rapper, he's awesome. The song's called, can I cuss? It's called Bad Bitch. So you guys are dressed so nice, I feel awkward cussing. But 80% of kids in the Black community are born out of wedlock. And what we're seeing is gender mistrust. It's not being raised by just your mom doesn't empower women. It actually creates misogyny, and because boys they need a healthy role model for masculinity, and when they don't get that, they cling on to the most unhealthy modes of masculinity, which is violence and promiscuity. And when girls, you saw with the 711% of teen pregnancy, when girls don't have the love of their fathers, the question that looms in their imagination is, what do I have to do to get love from a man? It's a need to feel love, and so they have sex. They think that's the thing you do. And here's another point I want to make with gender antagonism. When you have the luxury of both your mother and your father, your chance of getting a really great virtues education is much, much, much stronger. So if you have a single mom, or only your mom really cares for you, she probably has to work, right, to support the family financially. So kids without fathers, not only are they not getting fathered, but they're getting a lot less mothering too. And the schools aren't teaching you about virtue. They're not teaching how to be a good person. You miss that model of virtue, and how do two people cooperate and behave in a way that promotes trustworthiness. And love needs trust, and trust needs virtue. So if you're not being taught virtue, it's really hard to find love. Because people don't stick around with people they can't trust, you know? Another point, when kids become commodities, you have a value endowment. So I exist because my father sold me, right? And you're taught that that's normal and that's good or whatever. But if it's okay and good to sell that kind of human tissue, your sperm or eggs or womb, then why isn't it okay to sell this other kind of tissue? Organs, kidneys, stuff like that. If it's okay to sell your reproductive capacities, why isn't it okay to sell your sexual capacities? If it's okay to treat someone like a precious family member, your child or your child's father, as an instrument and a tool for your own wants and needs, then why isn't it okay to treat anybody else, for that matter, as an instrument and a tool? The abortion, you know, if it's okay to create life whenever you want, when it's convenient for you, why isn't it okay to end life when it's on your terms too? You know, and euthanasia. These ideas are a package. Okay, this is a wonderful woman, Narelle Grech, and this is her biological father, Ray Tana. Narelle is donor conceived. That's her father, who was an anonymous sperm donor. Narelle spent 15 years searching for Ray. She had a really rare type of cancer, and she wanted to find out. She wanted to notify her half-siblings and her family. Ray, and one more thing. This picture was taken just a few months before she died. She's gone now. It's really sad. If you go to the doctor now, they have you fill out these really long forms about your family history, because a lot of cancers, a lot of different syndromes and diseases now are informed by your family history. And if you don't know that, then you don't know if you're at risk for breast cancer or another type of cancer. It's important to know your medical information. Just a side note, Ray went on national TV recently, and he was talking about his daughter, and he said, when you meet your biological child, he said, I was just completely surprised. It was immediate, unconditional love. He had never met her before, but just because she was his daughter biologically, He felt immediate, unconditional love. Biology matters with the quality of care a child receives. It just does. Do you guys know the movie Old Boy? Okay, it's a Korean movie. It's considered one of the best Asian movies ever. It deals with incest, and the male character is, he's got this enemy, and the enemy kidnaps him and holds him and basically in confinement for 20 years, and then he plays this trick on him, and he hypnotizes them or something so that he ends up in a romantic relationship with his daughter, who was just like 2 years old when he was kidnapped. And the movie really does a phenomenal job of showing how just there's something just icky and disgusting about incest that just kills your soul. It just kills your soul. Undermines human dignity in a big way. So the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, they have these guidelines that suggest a limit of 25 children per donor per population of 800,000. So if you pluck that out, it's 258 offspring per donor within New York City, 608 offspring per donor within New York State, 9,812 within the U.S., and 219,607 offspring internationally. But those are just guidelines. They're not even hard and fast laws. So the number could be even more than that. And I do have donor-conceived friends who've estimated they have between 500 and 1,000 half-siblings. So it's a public health issue that we're not dealing with. It's embarrassing. Okay. All right, so euphemisms. You are not a donor if you're getting paid. Okay? You're not. They're lying to you. Gestational, so instead of the word father or mother, they're using the word donor. Instead of birth mother, they're using the word gestational carrier. Instead of baby selling or child abandonment, they're saying gift of life. And the payment for an egg donor is a compensation for your time, even though it's $8,000 for this girl who goes to a state school and is a little bit chubby, and the Harvard grad that's like a bombshell. It's the price discrepancy is not a compensation for your time. They're buying your genes. They're buying your kid, your product. Be aware of those euphemisms, please, and call people out on them. Call people out on them. I already told you, when someone says a child is wanted, I hope you can go back to those cases with Mark Newton and his partner and say, being wanted is not enough. And by the way, there are no home studies. There are no home studies with donor conception and surrogacy. So if you want to adopt a kid, you have the state plus some other people who come into your house and rip you apart, your finances, your how often do you wash your jeans? People who are unqualified parents, people who wouldn't be good parents, they just can't get kids through adoption for the most part. There's a lot of filters. Marriage is a natural parent test in itself. But when you have a market for kids, and you can make like $100,000 per kid, anybody who wants a kid can have a kid. There's no home studies. And I interviewed a woman. She was the owner of the largest egg donation agency in the world. And out of the thousands of clients she had rejected only one. I read an article with a gentleman he was a fertility doctor, and he owned his own fertility clinic. And he had, at that point in time, he'd been responsible for 500 live births And he had only rejected one client. It's just trouble you, you know. Wanted is not necessarily a great thing. So normalization through pop culture. Just because there's shows like Modern Family, and just because there's shows like The New Normal, just don't. What am I trying to say with that? That doesn't make it normal. It doesn't make it good. Just because a lot of people are doing something does not make it healthy. Just because a lot of people are doing it. I'm sure you guys all know people who are donor conceived, or you know people who have been donors, or people who have experienced fertility. It is sensitive. It's a really sensitive topic, but you can delicately handle it, and you can. Hopefully you've gotten some notes so you can present to people who are dealing with infertility why it's a bad idea to create a market for children. So maybe they'd be really good parents, you know they'd be really good parents, but it's still kind of a bad idea to even open the door for a market for people, right? You don't even want to open that door. Oh, I gotta go. Okay, I'm almost done. Body self-dualism, there's a really great book by Robbie George on that. I highly recommend it. You know, we can finish. You guys, thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Alana. That's great. The hardest thing is to stop you, because this is so powerful. It's so really moving. But I want to take at least 5 minutes for questions, because I know there have to be some. So this young lady here, Christian, can you? Joe, is our hand mic going into your feed?
No, so could you please repeat the question?
Okay, you know, the room is small enough. Never mind the mic. Go ahead.
How can we stress the difference between adoption versus the process we were just talking about now, since both carry a lot of the
Yeah.
same packages and the same problems?
Absolutely.
So if we accept adoption, why not this, right? What's the difference?
The important difference there is adoption is an institution that finds good parents, decent parents, for existing children that desperately need parents in a family. Donor conception and third-party reproduction is a market that creates children as a product for adults that desire them.
Yeah.
Right?
It's an important difference.
It's buying and selling humans. It's not a remedy for a tragedy.
Yes, young man in the sweater here.
I have a question. A lot of your speech was about science or the data and concerns with this topic, but what about your personal experience? How do you think your experience in relation to your mother, when you know that, for instance, she's the one that helped with probably you after your father, and for instance, the experience that you had with the family friend who lost a father, your mother telling you, oh, it's so sad they lost their father, but as a child, I would think that you'd think, where's my father? Who took him away from me?
Yeah.
Yeah, the questioner asks Alana to reflect on her own experience in addition to all the data and the studies that she's talked about. Go ahead.
Sure. My mother was the infallible goddess of the universe in my world. I had a very deep love. You know, of course I still do have a deep love for my mom, but our relationship has changed since I've begun doing this kind of work. She's definitely embarrassed by it, and she feels guilty for it. Though Alana Newman is actually not my legal and real name. So my name I do not publicize because I want to protect her from it. I want her to save face in front of her friends. I read a book called, The 5 Love Languages from Gary Chapman, right? So my mom's love languages are quality time and physical affection. So I try to spend a lot of quality time with her. I try to give her a lot of hugs, and that's saved our relationship a lot too. So, but I tell her the truth. And I say, look, this was wrong. But forgiveness is really important. You don't want to. I don't want to throw my mom away either. You know, like I miss having my father in my life, but I don't want to now sacrifice my mom too. And that's actually why I created. I'm sorry, I didn't. This is the next slide. I created a project called Anonymous Us. And so that's a story collective so that people, donor-conceived people and anybody else, they can write into my online platform, anonymously submit a story, get their thoughts and ideas out there, share it with the world so that everybody else knows what's going on, what the truth is. And they don't have to embarrass their mom, and they don't have to risk their relationship with their family.
I hate to do this, but can we leave it at your announcing that availability to the students because we're just out of time, and I know that there's got to be many more questions. But thanks so much, Alana. Thank you.